Welcome to this episode of our program, Arab Affairs. As usual, we will be discussing important Arab files. Today we'll be focusing on the Palestinian developments and the Libyan developments as well. In our first segment, we'll be speaking about the Palestinian developments in the Palestinian territories. And Egypt has already slammed Israeli authorities' demolition of a Palestinian home. They have successfully been able to evict a family from a Palestinian home for the very first time. And the Foreign Ministry has issued a statement reiterating Egypt's unwavering position of rejecting the building of new settlements or illegal settlements or expanding existing ones on the Palestinian occupied territories. We'll be speaking about that. We'll be speaking about the developments in the Palestinian territories so far. We're in our first segment. In our second segment, we'll be speaking about the developments inside or on the ground in Libya. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has already reiterated Egypt's position, supporting positions for Libya and for Libyans to reach consensus over their future and hold their elections as soon as possible. We'll be speaking about both files in our episode. Before we delve into our discussion, first let's have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week, and we'll come back for more discussion.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi stressed Egypt's keenness on pushing bilateral cooperation with Algeria on all levels at a meeting with visiting Algerian Foreign Minister Ramtan al-Amamra in Cairo on Monday. During the meeting that was attended by Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, President al-Sisi underscored the importance of activating joint committees to further relations between the two bloodthirsty nations. Al-Amamra handed President al-Sisi a written message from Algerian President Abdelmajid al-Tebboune that focused on bilateral cooperation and ways of enhancing coordination and consultations with President al-Sisi of regional issues and joint Arab action. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a telephone call with Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, during which the President offered his condolences over the victims of the terrorist attack near Abu Dhabi International Airport. During the call, the President condemned the attack by Houthi militia that targeted the United Arab Emirates lands, expressing Egypt's full support and solidarity to the United Arab Emirates in all measures and procedures being taken to defend its land and the safety of the citizens. The head of state confirmed that the United Arab Emirates' national security and stability are bound by those of Egypt within the framework of extended brotherly and historic bilateral ties. A United Nations agency appealed on Wednesday to the international community to donate tens of millions of dollars to help improve living conditions for Palestinians in crisis-hit Lebanon. The appeal by the Agency for Palestinian Refugees, or the UNRWA, is asking for an additional $87.5 million American dollars to provide Palestinian refugees with cash assistance to the poorest, cover hospital expenses, as well as transportation for children so that they can go to school. Head of Sudan's Transitional Council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, appointed 15 ministers in the government on Friday. A statement from the Sovereign Council said that ministers include Ali Saleh Ali for the Foreign Ministry and Mohammed Abdullah Mahmoud for the energy portfolio. Earlier on Friday, the Council agreed with a visiting U.S. delegation on forming a national independent government of technocrats and launching a comprehensive national dialogue to resolve the current political crisis. 3 Iranian diplomats have arrived in Saudi Arabia to take up posts in the headquarters of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in Jeddah. An Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman said that Tehran and Saudi Arabia, which severed diplomatic ties in 2016, launched direct talks last year at a time when global powers were trying to salvage a 2015 nuclear pact with Tehran, and as the United Nations led efforts to end a war in Yemen stall. In a further sign of a thaw in ruptured ties, Iran said in December that Saudi Arabia had agreed to grant visas to Iranian diplomats to be based in the kingdom. Tehran and Riyadh held 4 rounds of talks in Iraq, with Baghdad hoping its mediation efforts will stop the neighbors seeking to settle scores on its territory. Libya's rival central bank branches said that they had taken a big step towards reunifying on Thursday as part of United Nations-backed peace push between warring factions in the east and west. The Central Bank of Libya split when the country divided in 2014, but the rival branches have made progress over the past year towards fully reunifying, a major goal of international peace plans. Economic divisions have added to the oil exporting country's chaos and led to differing exchange rates, liquidity shortages, and ballooning public debts that further hurt Libya's battered economy.
Right, welcome back, and I guess we have with us over the phone Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, to highlight the issue. Good afternoon to you, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. And we're speaking today about the Palestinian developments so far. We have seen on last Wednesday, a new trial to evict families from Sheikh Jarrah homes. In fact, one was very much successful and there were some arrests. How do you describe the scene in the Palestinian territories from your point of view? How would that encourage any kind of return to real talks for peace?
It is really a sad story. I cannot be optimistic here. The only people and the only country in the whole world which is still occupied, it's Palestine. And since Gamal Abdel Nasser and the whole world decided to finish the time of colonialism, Israel is still occupying the biggest part of Palestine. They did not abide to the United Nations decision to put the right border of Israel. It's not a secret that Israel has no official map because they think that they can expand on the account of the Palestinian, the Lebanese, and Syria, of course, and the Golan Heights. So it is a very strange situation where the whole world do not accept this. The European Union is always condemning this policy. They do not import any commodities produced in the occupied land. But if you go to the United Nations, one of our latest votes concerning Jerusalem, we got 149 votes with the Palestinian question. Even so, we cannot convince Israel that this is unwise policy, although a real Jew community in the States and in Europe who know the real future in the area, they do not accept what Israel is doing, because if Israel do not abide to the two countries solution, then it means that in the current future, Palestinian people will exceed the Israelis, and you are surrounding yourself, Israel, I mean, with a total border of enemies. What is the future of this country, and what are the leaders of Israel are seeking here? I don't know really. But we have two points which are not encouraging at all. On the Palestinian side, the division between Hamas and the PLO, of course, it is weakening our position. Also, in the Israeli side, we do not have any more leaders in the size of Rabin or Shimon Peres or those who could conclude a peace treaty. And now you have a sort of an alliance government where the very right politicians are having the vote in the cabinet, and you cannot reach with a country divided like that a real solution or to take the right decision concerning what Israel should do concerning the Palestinian question.
Recently, we have seen a meeting between Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri and the Minister of, or the Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yair Lapid, who was visiting Egypt, and that already, or that meeting has came 3 months after the meeting of President Sisi to the Israeli Naftali Bennett, who was also visiting Egypt after Egypt was able to cement a truce between the Palestinian and Israelis and worked on the reconstruction of Gaza. If I may ask you here, how does how does Egypt go along with trying to help Palestinians find their or restart peace negotiations between both sides, while at the same time both sides are not helping move on with or accelerating with the return of such a stalemate?
Here is a problem, but the good side of the story, that Egypt's voice is well heard in Israel. They understand quite well if it comes to the Egyptian border, they behave. And talking to Israelis, myself, when I was in charge of this file, they believe that Egypt did them a sort of very good push towards being an alive country. There is, it's not a secret that there is a sort of coordination concerning combating terrorism or drug trafficking of those illegal crimes. When the war started recently between Hamas and Gaza and the Israeli troops, it was only Egypt who can talk to both sides and succeed to stop this conflict. No other country in the world can do this. This is the good side of the story. But unfortunately, it doesn't come to the level that the Israelis would believe in what we are saying. They do not ready to take our advice for their own sake, and until we find a real leadership who can impose the peace solution on the others in Israel, I think we have to wait a little bit and to see what's going on. But after all, as Egyptian belong to the oldest diplomacy in the world, I understand that I can ask you, what if we close our eyes for the coming 20 or 30 or 50 years? Is there any future for this Israeli practices after half a century? No way. That's why some wise Jews in the campaign in the United States always advising Israel to have a solution there, because in the long run, no future for a country surrounded with 150 million immediate border of enemies, occupying much more than the inhabitants of Israel would need, establishing settlements everywhere. And by the way, I tell you, it is the economists, not me, who said once that this is some ghost houses. They build houses in order just to put their hands on the territory, and they do not have enough people to occupy those settlements. It is an amazing situation, but as I said, I am quite confident that whatever it takes, we shall see. Israel has no future unless they recognize a Palestinian country at state, unless they recognize the Palestinian right to live in their country. But until then, really, I am very sad because from day to another, on daily basis, the Palestinians are suffering. The Israelis are destroying houses of Palestinians, as you mentioned in the news now, that El Garrah district, we have many houses were destroyed in order to bring Israelis to replace the Arabs in Jerusalem. But it's nonsense. No future for Israel if they continue this aggressive attitude and make all of us around it so angry about Israel. Yes. Even the possible alliance in Europe or in the States or in Asia, they do not agree with this, or they do not recognize Israel with this border. I here recall something, maybe you were so young not to realize, when President Johnson of America sent a letter to the Prime Minister of Israel telling him, you are asking me to secure your borders. Which border you mean? This is a country without a border. Indeed. And they do not have official map. Once I was lecturing some Israeli diplomats here in Egypt, in Cairo, and they were complaining that we do not put the name of Israel on the maps, Egyptian maps. I told them, tell us where is your border, then you will put your name or Israel name on the map. But without knowing your attitude concerning your own country, you don't have any position where to stop. Since 1948, Israel is expanding on the account of the Palestinians. When they will stop, God knows.
Actually, on the account of the Arab territories, we are not here forgetting the Golan Heights or the green farms of Sheba, of Lebanon. Definitely, all what you said is even legally unaccountable. Since we're speaking about a country with a state without borders, then how can the United Nations accept Israel as an independent country if it doesn't have borders, and its resolutions were two independent states? So where are the borders of those both two independent states? Another important issue here was President Sisi's demand for countries to help the UNRWA, this very important UN organization that works for the refugees all over the world. How do you view such an urge, and how do you view the importance of helping such an organization, since we're not seeing any kind of settlements to the Palestinian cause recently?
As of the United Nations resolutions, it is as much as we cannot imagine. And some jokes were told by that time, since the 50s and 60s, that Israel is using the resolutions of the United Nations as a wallpaper. They put it on the paper as a wallpaper. But they do not read it, they do not recognize it, they do not implement it. So it is a very sad story that a member of the United Nations does not abide or respect the resolutions of the United Nations. This is on one side. But shall we continue defending our cause and the Palestinian cause? Of course we shall continue, and nobody will accept this. As of the UNRWA, I think you remember that unfortunately one day the United States stopped its share to finance the UNRWA, and as a matter of fact, and this we must underline what I'm going to say, that it is the Arab world, and especially the Gulf states, who are financing the UNRWA to help the Palestinian brothers. So it's a strange story, but I think that we are there. Egypt did and doing all what it can in order to make this cause alive, and one day we shall reach a solution, inshallah.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And Egypt is doing as it used to do since decades. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for being with us over the phone. Before we delve into the discussion of the developments in Libya, let's see this report and we'll come back for more discussion.
The foreign ministers of France, Germany, Italy, and Spain urged Israeli authorities on Wednesday evening to stop the construction of a new housing units in East Jerusalem. Israeli authorities had approved plans for the construction of around 3,500 homes in the occupied East Jerusalem, nearly half of which were to be built in the controversial areas of Sheikh Jarrah. In a statement, the European country said that the hundreds of new buildings would constitute an additional obstacle to the two-stage solution, referring to international peace efforts to create a state for the Palestinians. They said that building in this area would further disconnect the West Bank from East Jerusalem and that these settlements were a violation of international law. Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki, for his part, criticized U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday for moving too slowly to reverse all of the Trump administration's adverse policies. He told the United Nations Security Council that Washington was not using its special relationship to pressure Israel to abandon its rejection of the two-state solution and peace negotiations. Israel captured East Jerusalem, including the Old City, in a 1967 war and later annexed it, a move not recognized internationally. Palestinians want East Jerusalem for the capital of a state they seek in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, which abuts the city and the Gaza Strip. Most world powers deem the Israeli settlements illegal for taking in territory where Palestinians seek statehood. The four countries also expressed concern about the evictions and demolitions in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, where residents say they are being displaced.
Right, welcome back, and these are the developments in the Palestinian territories. Now we move to the Libyan side, where Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry had received last week his Algerian counterpart Ramadan Amamra in Egypt here, and discussed bilateral issues, but also regional issues, particularly the Libyan file. Also, we have seen President Sisi during his meeting with the South Korean president here, reiterating Egypt's full support to the Libyan side until they find their own stability. I guess to highlight the issue and the developments in the Libyan territories, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Hussein Hariri, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon, Madam.
Yes. Now we have seen the developments in Libya the whole issue is at stalemate. We don't understand exactly when elections are supposed to be taking place after they were postponed. What should be done at this upcoming stage? Is the stage arranged for such elections to take? How do you view the developments on the ground in Libya?
Well, honestly speaking, Madam, after the decision to postpone the December 24th elections in Libya, nothing has dramatically changed in the Libyan domestic political equation. The differences between the leading Libyan political forces are so deep that it seems that, at least at the present moment, are unbridgeable. Lately, the Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General, Ms. Stephanie Williams, flew to Turkey, and from Turkey she came to Cairo, and she held talks both in Ankara and in Cairo about the situation in Libya. According to her statements, it seems that she is trying hard to push the Libyan political forces to agree on a definite date for the elections. But lately, 2 days or 3 days ago, the Speaker of the the Libyan House of Representatives made things a little bit more difficult when he said that they have to work on a new constitutional document. And that, of course, in itself raises lots of problems within Libya. Between the higher state council, the majority in this council, of course, as you may know, madam, are members in the Libyans Muslim Brothers organization, and the people and the members in the Libyan House of Representatives in Tobruk. So, as long as the Libyan leaders haven't come to an understanding on how to proceed, I see no way forward, and it would be a bit difficult for anyone to predict when elections will be held in Libya.
If I may ask you here, Ambassador Hariri, we have seen lots of meetings and lots of efforts from Egypt. I mean, here the president himself met with the visiting Algerian foreign minister, reiterating Egypt's full support for the stability, security, and unity of Libya, and the need to exit all, or the need for exiting all the foreign troops from Libya. Same issues were raised with the United States, with Russia, recently with South Korea. I mean, we are speaking in all the international forum, but here we have to understand why the situation is complicated. What is complicating the situation? What is complicating taking this step for election, for the stability of Libya?
Well, the stakeholders in Libya, whether they are in the west or east of Libya, have realized fully well that free and fair elections under international and United Nations monitoring missions would end their prerogatives and would empower the Libyan people to choose freely, based on its free will, new leaders for Libya. So the stakeholders of today, that they have been in power ever since 2014, see no interest at all for themselves and for the political forces that they lead to hold the elections anytime soon, madam. Another complicating factor is that some Libyan political forces are allied with foreign powers, whether European powers or regional powers. And these powers, both European and regional, have different interests in Libya and the future of Libya, whether we are speaking about future energy supply, whether we are speaking about the huge reconstruction deals that are expected to take place once the political situation is stabilized in Libya. So these are complicating factors. And to add to that, the most dangerous factor is that the presence of the armed militias,
exactly,
that are allied to foreign powers, and they are dictated to a great extent by these powers.
Ambassador Hariri, we just few days ago, we're speaking about on the 17th of January, head of the Libyan High Electoral Commission has said that they have received several threats from different armed militias to restrain them from announcing the final lists. How can the the world help Libya in such a matter, since that will hinder all kind of process to move forward with the stability of Libya?
Well, I'm afraid to say, Madam, that the Libyan Election Commission has no authority and has no power on the armed militias in Libya. And I'm really surprised that the Commission would make such a statement. Such a statement should come either from the Libyan House of Representatives or from the Presidential Council headed by Mr. Mohammed al-Makki, or the National Unity Government of Mr. Abdel Hamid al-Dibeiba. But for the Election Commission to announce that it has received assurances from the armed militias that they are going to interfere in the electoral process, that is highly surprising and highly strange. But anyhow, answering your question, how the world could help the Libyans, is that it's very simple, Madam. They have, all countries, all powers should carry out and should respect and honor the United Nations Security Council resolutions on Libya. To begin with, to stop shipping armaments to Libya. You may recall that in March 2011, the Security Council had adopted a resolution imposing an arms blockade on Libya. And certain powers have been flouting this resolution for the last 10 years. And so the first step to take is that for the international community, for the United Nations and the European Union, the United States, rather they have to impose this resolution. So anyhow, Madam, let's hope that the Libyans themselves would find it in their national interest to put an end to the Libyan crisis.
Indeed, Ambassador, really, we all hope for for peace to prevail between all parties, all the concerned parties in Libya, to put and prioritize the interests of Libya at first hand. Ambassador Hussein Hariri, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for being with us. I guess these were the news that came out of Libya recently, and it were published in many of the news agencies, the world news agencies, and definitely reiterated by reports. Hopefully, things would be stabilizing in Libya in order for Libya to come back to its role in the Middle East. Many thanks for watching. Next Saturday would be another important Arab Files. Until then, it's goodbye.